So I was thinking about it, and since I decided to lose weight over a year ago, I haven't had nachos in over a year. So that needed to change. Quickly. This plate of nachos has 450 calories with over 50 grams of protein. So today we're using one of my favorite meal prep techniques to make these nachos and have them throughout my week. So stick around to the end to see the 2 mistakes that I made on these nachos so you don't do the same, but let's get started. To get started, the meal prep technique that we're going to be using for this time is going to be getting the ingredients prepped, not the actual meals prepped. This will prevent the chips of your nachos from getting all soggy, because if you put everything in those little meal prep containers, you're going to have some soggy chips. But to get things started, start by getting the seasonings for your taco meat together. We're going to be going with a Taco Bell style seasoning using the following ingredients. Start with 10 grams or 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour, 8 grams or 3 teaspoons of onion powder, 3 grams or 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 8 grams or 2 teaspoons of salt, 6 grams or 1 tablespoon of ancho chili powder or your chili powder of choice, 2 grams or 1 teaspoon of cumin, and then optionally I would go with 1 gram or 1/2 teaspoon of habanero powder if you like things spicy, and then finish it off with 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of 0-calorie sweetener to balance out the spice. Then whisk that into a mixture of seasonings and set that to the side. In a new container, measure out 180 milliliters of beef broth. This will be added to the beef and the seasonings later, but for now, set this aside and move on to the Pico de Gallo. While I would normally stick with Roma tomato for Pico de Gallo, I only had on the vine available. So take 1 tomato, about 110 grams of it, and dice it up and transfer it into a container. Then take your onion, dice that up as finely as possible, and then add about 65 grams of that into that container, save the rest for something else. Next, grab your cilantro and cut off some off the end of it, and then do your best Afro Man impression and pick out the seeds and stems. Yes, I'm aware I probably just aged myself right there. Anyway, take that cilantro and dice it up as finely as possible to get little tiny flakes out of it, and then transfer it into the container with the onions and tomatoes. You're shooting for about 10 grams of it. To wrap up your pico de gallo, take a little bit of lime juice and squirt that in the container with the tomatoes, onions, and cilantro. Then take a fork, mix it all together until it looks like pico de gallo. With that out of the way, we can move on to the most important part of the nachos: homemade protein tortilla chips. To those of you who saw how I meal prepped Joe Duff's 3-ingredient Cinnamon Toast Crunch, this is going to look very familiar to you. We're going to be doing the same principle to make the chips here. We'll take 3 Joseph's Lavish bread, and then we'll be taking some non-stick cooking spray, some salt, and optionally some chili lime seasoning to add some spice to it, and we're going to be making these into our chips. Start by laying down 1 Lavish bread, and then take the non-stick cooking spray of your choice, I'm using butter flavored, and lightly coat that Lavish bread. Then lightly salt it, and then like I said optionally, take some chili lime seasoning and cover it with that. Then we're going to take your hands and lightly rub all that flavor into the Lavish bread, flip it over, and repeat the process. Once both sides of the flatbread are covered in flavor, then we're going to take a pizza cutter and cut it into whatever shapes you want. I've cut mine into triangles. I also cut it into strips when I feel like it. Genuinely though, cut it in whatever shape you want. Hearts, squares, rainbows if you got the skill. Whatever you want to do, you do that. You're just making chips. Then to finish off the chips, take some parchment paper, rip it off, put it on a baking sheet, and then put those chips on the parchment paper. I do these 2 at a shot, so I'll put 2 of the baking pans in the oven for 6 minutes at 350 degrees. Then after 6 minutes, I will take them and switch their place so they all bake evenly and do them for another 6 minutes. If you want to do them one at a time, do it for 12 minutes, but keep an eye on it. If you go past the 10 to 12 minute mark too long, you're going to get burnt chips. You're looking to get right to the point where these things will snap on their own. You don't want them soggy, but you don't want them burnt. So really do keep an eye on the chips. That's why we do these first before the meat or the cheese. Once your chips are done, transfer them to their final resting place or the container you want them to sit in, and then we can move on to the good stuff: cooking the meat and cheese. Start by filling a small pot with some water, and then pop a double boiler in it and turn the heat on really low. And if you watch this channel at all, you know what cheese is about to be used next. That's right, Velveeta. Take 140 grams of blocked Velveeta, pop it in the double boiler, and then add in 65 milliliters of fat-free Fairlife. Then all you have to do is just let it slow cook and let it melt. All you have to do is come back and stir it on occasion, but you can kind of just let this sit here and do its thing while you move on to the meat. For the taco meat, take 16 ounces or 1 pound of 93 lean ground beef, throw it in a pan on high heat, and just slowly mash it up and slowly cook it until it's all the way brown. After 5 minutes or so of browning and mashing, it should be relatively mashed up and browned all the way around. And while it is a 93 lean ground beef and it won't have much fat liquid in there, just in case, take a lid, put it over the pan, and drain out any excess liquid in the sink. Then take the pan, put it back on the stove, and turn it down to a low heat. If you're on an electric range like me, I turn it down to a 1 or 2. We're just trying to simmer it now. Now, take the seasonings that we mixed up earlier in the video, put it on top of the meat, and then add in the beef broth that we measured out earlier in the video in with that. Stir it all the way around, then cover it with a pot and let it simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes. After 2 to 3 minutes, come back with the potato masher and proceed to mash the hell out of it. We're doing this because, well, I'm a Taco Bell addict, and if you ever see Taco Bell meat, it's really mashed up and it's really fine. So I'll sit here and I will mash the hell out of this thing for about 2 minutes until the taco meat is really, really fine. If your beef dries out a little too much while you're doing this, you can add another splash of beef broth into it like I did and then stir it back up, but you're really just trying to get it to the consistency that you want your own taco meat to get to. Once that's done, you finish cooking it. Then just take your beef, transfer it into a container, take your cheese, transfer it into a container, and you now have all 4 ingredients you need for nachos transferred into individual containers. Then all you have left to do is to make yourself a big, beautiful plate of nachos. Now, for those 2 mistakes that I mentioned at the start of the video, they both have to do with the chips. First, I oversalted the hell out of my chips, so be careful with how much salt you add when you get started. The first time around, keep it light, and add more the second time if you need to. Second, I definitely overdid it with the chili lime seasoning on the chips, despite how much I love spicy stuff. So if you love spice, be careful with how much you add to it. If you don't like spice, just leave it off and stick with a salty tortilla chip. As far as the macro breakdown goes, this normally becomes 3 meals for me. However, I was hungry enough and short enough on calories when I made this, I had 2 servings at one shot. So, for a plate this size for my lunch the next day, this is 1/3 of everything. And for 1/3 of the meal, you're looking at 477 calories, 29 grams of carbs, 18.7 grams of fat, and 53.2 grams of protein. So, if you're looking for some good Mexican food that you can eat on your diet, or want to know how you can get some nachos in, give these a try. If you try it and you like it, hit the like button down below. If you have any other favorites you want to see made high protein, let me know in the comments. If you want to help the channel out or see more recipes coming down the road, hit subscribe. But in the meantime, I've got some nachos to enjoy. Thanks for watching.